everyone, welcome to our channel. Today we have some really fun DIYs that we'll be making using items mainly from Dollar Tree. We'll be making this grouping of different home decor pieces, and we'll go over the supplies separately for each one. So for the first one, we're going to be making these little bees because we're going to use them in all of the projects. So let's go over the supplies first. We'll need a Sharpie, some black yarn. We're also going to need some of the Dollar Tree wooden beads in various sizes. We'll need the miniature clothespins. We're also going to use a small piece of the chopping mats and some scissors. We'll also need some hot glue. So let's get crafty making our little bees. So the first thing I did was take the largest bead in yellow, and I'm going to glue a black bead in the medium size to the front of it with the opening to the side so it looks like eyes. And then we'll glue a medium sized yellow bead to the back, making sure the opening to the bead is towards the back. Now placing a little bit of hot glue in the spaces where we glued the beads together, we'll use that to wrap some of the black yarn around so that we have the stripes of the bee. Then just add a little bit of hot glue to put the end of the yarn down just to make sure it stays in place. And this is what we have so far. So now we're going to take this miniature clothespin, and you just want to take it apart. They're really small, so right here in this opening, that's where you're going to want to cut. It cuts real easy with a pair of scissors, and these will be the stingers for the bee, which is why we have the opening to the bead towards the back. And you just want to put a little bit of hot glue in there and then push the stinger into the back of the bee. You want to make sure you don't push it in too far so you have enough of the stinger sticking out of the back. Now we're going to take a piece of that chopping mat, and we're just going to draw heart shapes and cut those out with scissors. And then once you do that, you just want to take a Sharpie marker in black, and then you just want to trace around the edges and make some little veins in the wings and color your stinger on the back of the bee black once the glue has dried. And then once the Sharpie has dried on the wings, go ahead and glue those to the sides of the bee. Now I did make these in a bunch of different sizes. You can use all the different sizes of the yellow beads in your package that you get from Dollar Tree, because it was kind of fun to have larger and smaller bees on all the different projects. And here's what it looks like finished. And now we'll move on to project number 2. So we'll do the supplies first. We'll be making this beehive. We're going to use these Jot brand wood magnets. We're also going to use some of the nautical rope. We'll need one of these house picture frames, some twine. You'll need some different greenery or leaves of your choice, some scissors. We're also going to need some hot glue for this one as well, and then a few of the bees that we just made. So let's get crafty. So the first thing we want to do is take our picture frame here, and we don't want to see that picture, so we're going to flip the paper over in the frame so you have a solid color background. So once you have that solid color background, what you want to do is replace the backing and attach the end of the rope to the back of the frame with some hot glue, which is what I did here. And then you just want to go ahead and start wrapping this around your frame. Now don't worry if there's some spaces, because we're going to fix that as we go along. As you notice, I'm going underneath of the little easel back, and that's going to be so that we can still use that backing to be able to stand this up, so we can place it pretty much anywhere that we want. We don't have to hang it if we don't want to. So I make sure I wrap this pretty tight, and when I get to the end of the roll of the ribbon there, all you want to do is flip the frame over and then start scrunching the rope down so that it is as close as you can get to each piece. Now if you want to, you can put a little bit of hot glue between the layers. I didn't find it necessary. I just glued the beginning and the end of the rope to the actual frame itself. So I'm just adding some hot glue here to the back. I held it in place until it was dry before I flipped it over and finished gluing the other end of the rope down. It's okay if the beginning or ending of the rope is in the front. You're not going to see it when we're done. So as you can see, I just glue it, the new roll here right to the end of the other one, and I just push it as close as I can to the roll of rope that I just finished. Now you do want to hold on to the end to make sure it's dry all the way as you start to wrap this around. And you want to add a little bit more of hot glue to the back just to make sure you have the beginning of this roll of rope glued down and in place before you start to wrap it, because you do want to wrap it pretty tight so you don't have the spaces where you can see through it and see the frame in the background. As you can see, as I wrap it around, I give it like a little tug and stretch those fibers of the rope so that it just helps to get it nice and close together. So once I get to the top of the easel, as you see, I start gluing the rope on top of it. And this is perfect because it helps hold that easel in place to help put the picture frame upright when you want to set it up. So this is our second roll of rope. So I'm just going to go ahead and glue that end down. Now when we get to the top, it's a little bit more tricky. You do have to add more hot glue to get it to stay in place around the corners and the edges. As you'll see here, I just keep adding little bits of hot glue, and then you do have to scrunch the rope down here as you go to make sure it's in the right spot. And then some of the spots where you hot glue, especially on the corners, you want to hold the rope in place until the glue has dried before you move on to wrapping it anymore. So this took almost 3 rolls of the white rope, and I did have a little bit of excess at the top that I was able to cut off. Once you have the rope wrapped all the way to the top of the frame, then what you want to do is you want to stand the frame up and then put the hot glue right on the tippy top there, and then just roll that rope around in a circle and then cut off the excess. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit more hot glue in the center and then tuck that end of that rope down inside as best you can. So I used a pencil to help kind of push the ends down inside of the frame. And here's what it looks like so far. So now we're going to take those magnets that we picked up from the Dollar Tree. I thought these were so cute. They look like a beehive shape, which I thought was really cute to make a little door to the opening of the hive here. So we're going to glue 3 of the magnets upside down. So we have the black showing on the front, and we're going to do 3 at the bottom, and then we'll put 2 above that and then 1 at the top, like you're building a pyramid. Now you can leave it like this if you like. I decided to go ahead and take some of the darker nautical rope from the Dollar Tree, the small roll that they have that comes in 2 sizes. This is the thinner rope. And what I did was I just added some hot glue around the door here, and then I held the glue and the rope in place so that I could really push it into those little corners so it looked like it was right up against the edge there, so we didn't have any gaps. And I just continued that process all the way around the door and continued it all the way across the bottom. So once that was dry, I moved on to the top. So we just have this greenery from Dollar Tree. I decided to just use these 2 pieces and kind of glue them in like an X pattern at the top. And then I made a very simple twine bow, and I glued that right to the center. And then a small bumblebee that we made out of the beads. So I glued 3 of these to the hive all together, 1 in the doorway, and then 2 at the top. and then just glued a small little sprig of flowers right to the center of the bow. And this is it. I just love how this turned out. It was really simple. So now let's do project number 3. So the supplies you'll need are one of these mason jar signs. If you can't find this sign, that's okay. They were out a really long time ago. They have some patriotic signs out and some luau signs that look just like mason jars that you can use in its place. We'll need some paint markers by the Crafter Square brand, some of the Jot brand magnets, some twine. We'll use the greenery. Again, really any greenery of your choice will do. We'll also need the scissors and the hot glue gun. And then we will need some paint brushes. Now, I'm going to use a Cricut for mine. You could use a chalk writer marker. You could also use these little stickers and just work out your words and paint them different colors. They come in different colors, but again, I'm going to use a Cricut. We'll need some chalk paint, and then I'm going to use these dried flowers from Dollar Tree, and of course the little bees that we made in the first project. So let's get crafty. So again, I'm going to take this mason jar sign. I've had this for quite a while, just never used it, and I'm just going to cover the writing in the words with some black chalk paint. So right now they have these little DIY mason jar signs in the patriotic section that you could buy to do this project with. They also have some luau and some larger patriotic signs that look like mason jars. So you could use those as well. So that's why I decided to make it with this project, because I knew you could still find the mason jars in some form or fashion at the Dollar Tree. So now, since I'm going to use the Cricut, I just printed out this Bible verse here. It says, "Kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul." And again, you could use these little stickers if you like, but I just used the words I cut out in vinyl. And they do have like little bees that I put around the edges there, but you could use the bees that we made out of the beads, or you could even get some stickers that have bees that the Dollar Tree carries that you could put on the sides there if you like. And really you can have it say anything you like, but I just thought it was cute with this little pairing that we're doing here with all the bees and things. So since I wanted to make this mason jar look like it was storing honey, to go along with the verse that I chose, I'm just going to use the Crafter Square gold paint marker and then fill in this little area that I kind of drew out in white so that I could kind of trace it and use it as a pattern. It was just kind of help you guys see how I was kind of doing the top there. I'm not really sure it helped all that much. So I just fill all of that in with the gold paint marker. You could use yellow. You don't have to have a paint marker. You can just paint it on if you like. It's really up to you. And then to make the bees look like they had some movement, like they were flying, I took a yellow paint marker and then just drew like a squiggly dotted line underneath of all of them to kind of fill in some of those blank spots around the edges and the sides, just to make them look like they were flying. And I kind of like adding a little bit more color to the sign in itself. So if you use the bees that we made out of the beads in these sections here, you can still do that little dotted line behind it. I think it would look cute. It would help them to look like they're flying, and those would work just as well here. So then I took a white chalk marker or paint marker, and I just filled in those lines that I painted over earlier with the black chalk paint. I could still kind of see the lines there. So I initially wrote the Bible verse at the bottom and I didn't like the way it looked, so I decided to change that, which you'll see later on. So then I took some of the twine and just wrapped it around the lip of the jar here, just to give it a little bit more added detail. I just wrapped it around a few times, and you could either just tie it off on the back or you could finish it off with some hot glue. It's really up to you. I just tied mine. If you wrap it around tight enough, because there's those little ridges on the side, it's not going to go anywhere, so you really don't need hot glue. And then I took some leaves that I had and just ripped those off some flowers and glued those on. I glued these little yellow dried flowers that the Dollar Tree's had out the last 2 weeks to the top, and then some more of the Dollar Tree greenery. I just decided to glue those around the base here. So I glued the yellow flowers to either side, and then glued a few more of these little leaves in that ridge that the mason jar is sitting in. I had these little yellow roses from Dollar Tree, so I glued those on as well. That's where I got the little green leaves from the side. And glued one more little yellow flower to the top. So then I took one of those bees that we made earlier, and I glued one of those onto the mason jar down on the bottom by the flowers. And then I also took one of those magnets. That's what I ended up writing the Bible verse on, since it had that beehive shape or the honeycomb shape. And I glued that over top of where I had already written in, and then I just covered over it with the paint to make it look like some lines in the mason jar. So once I kind of fixed that mistake that I made there, and it wasn't really a mistake, I just didn't like the way that it looked. So I just wanted to cover that in. I drew a few more little lines on the mason jar to give it some shape. And then took our little bumblebee that we made out of the beads and glued him down in the corner on top of the flowers. And that's our honey jar all finished. So for number 4 here, the sign we'll be making is from Dollar Tree. So let's go over the supplies. So this sign comes ready-made from the Dollar Tree. We're going to need some parchment paper. You'll need the black yarn again. And we will need the hot glue. We'll need some scissors. And then we're also going to use some yellow paint from the Dollar Tree. We'll need, I actually used a little bit of gold glitter from Dollar Tree, some paint brushes, some different ribbon of your choice that matches, and then again, the little bees out of the beads. So let's get crafty making number 4. So what we're going to do is just use this parchment paper. It'll help to keep the glue from sticking. And what we're going to do is we're just going to draw out the shapes of honey with a pencil, and then take our hot glue gun, and we're just going to fill in those shapes with the hot glue gun. And then once it dries, we'll be able to peel it right off of the paper, and it makes it really fun. Looks like little dripping honey. So as you see, once it's dry, it just peels right off. And then I just laid it on top of a new piece of parchment paper, and then I painted them yellow. It just took the one coat of the yellow paint, and while it was wet, I sprinkled on a little bit of the super fine gold glitter that Dollar Tree will carry in the Crafter's Square brand. So I put a little bit of gold paint on, gold glitter, and then let that dry. So while that was drying, we just took the sign that was already made at the Dollar Tree. We're going to glue a little bit of the black yarn onto the back corner, and then we'll just wrap this around the side of the sign a few times. And you kind of just want to go in almost like an X type pattern, just kind of back and forth a little bit. And you don't want to have them exactly in the same line. You just want to crisscross them a little bit, and then cut off the excess and glue down the end of the yarn just to the bottom edge. Then we're going to take our honey that has dripped, the dripping honey look, and we're just going to glue that all across the top. So I had glued one of the little bees to the corner, but it looked too plain to me. So I ended up pulling that off. I made a very simple bow. You just overlap layers of ribbon and then tie it in the center. I glued that to the corner and put one of our wooden bees in the corner there. And that was it. This one was super simple since the sign came pre-made from Dollar Tree. So now for number 5, we're going to be making this sign, and we'll go over the supplies. We're going to use one of these sunflower wall creation stickers from Dollar Tree. We'll need some black paper, some of these peel and stick poster sticker letters, and one of these honeybee clipboards from Dollar Tree, some black yarn. We'll need hot glue and some scissors. We're also going to be using an X-Acto knife. We will need some paint brushes, and then we'll need some white paint. We're going to use the paint markers also. We'll need a pencil, some wire cutters, a ruler. We're going to use a screwdriver, some of the jot magnets, and some twine, a little bit of greenery. And again, we'll use some more of the little bees that we made. Okay, so the first thing we need to do for this clipboard is we need to remove the top part that holds the paper. So what you want to do is just stick a very fine, small screwdriver underneath of it, and then just kind of pry it up a little bit. And then if you put the screwdriver underneath those little clasps that are holding onto it, just kind of flip the little like ledge up, it'll help you just be able to wiggle it off. And then you've got the little bolts in the back. So just take some wire cutters or some scissors, and you want to just kind of pry them underneath of it, and they pull right out. So then I took hot glue and I just filled in the holes and smoothed it out with a craft stick. So now lay your clipboard on top of a piece of black paper and just trace around it so you know what size to make it. And then you're just going to cut that out with your scissors. So then you want to find the center of your paper. So you're just going to fold the paper over and just mark the middle there. Then I marked it with a pencil so I'd be able to see it easier. And then I took a ruler, and I'm just going to use the width of the ruler to draw a border all the way around the paper. And we're going to cut this first layer off. So all of those lines I just created was the border to cut off, so I can make it smaller and I could still see the bee clipboard behind the sign that we're making. Then I drew these little spots that I'm going to cut out with a razor blade, and we just keep drawing the lines, and you'll see how it turns out in the end, and the lines will make more sense. So like I said, the first time around here, we're just going to cut off the border, and that's just the width of a ruler all the way around the paper. So once we have that off, we're going to just use the razor blade, and we're going to just cut out these little notches here. And again, it's just the width of a ruler. Then you just want to pop that out. You'll do the same thing to the other side. And then for our sunflower, I just cut it right in half down the center. And then you just want to cut that off your paper there. Peel that off, the backing off. And then you're going to find the center of your sticker here just by bending it just a little bit and line it up with the center of the paper that we found earlier. So that's going to be the bottom edge. And then I just took this white pencil so you guys could see it. And I basically made a pattern that I'm going to cut out with the razor blade, and that will help leave the black border around the flower, but then also have the bee clipboard show through around the flower here to help bring in some of the background. So once I have that all cut out, then I just cut that little piece of paper off. I just wanted the outline around the flower. So now we're going to take that black yarn, and we're pretty much doing the same thing we did for the last picture. We're just going to add some hot glue and then wrap this around both sides this time of the sign. So we're going to do around this edge. I should have actually done this part last. I should have glued the black paper on first, but I wasn't quite thinking straight. And so I just did the black yarn on both sides, and then I was able to just slide the black paper underneath, and I had to add the glue just in like little steps here underneath because I already had the yarn glued onto the back. So as you can see, I just centered the black paper right in the center, and you could see all the cuts that we made with the razor blade. So we could see the honeybees and the hive in the background. Then I glued these leaves up in the far left corner, made a very simple twine bow, and we're going to glue that right underneath of the leaves there. And then we'll add the bees that we made. Now now taking those magnets and the paint marker, we're just going to write out the word bee. And then once those dried, we just glue them right to the top center of the sign. I added a little bit more greenery to the top. And then right above the flower, I wanted it to say the word kind. So what I did is I ended up taking those poster stickers that you can find at the Dollar Tree. They're super nice. I cut out the word kind, and then I wanted them a different color. They only come in black. So I painted them with the white chalk paint, and it did take 2 coats to completely cover it. So once those were dry, I put those on the center of the sign. I actually ran out of battery and didn't notice, so I didn't get the end of it. I only got the letter I on there. But what I did is I took the black paint marker and I kind of just did a dotted line around the letters there to help tie it all together with the coloring. So that one's all done. And now we'll do number 6 here. We're going to need one of these pinwheels from Dollar Tree. We'll need some of these ornaments from the Dollar Tree that they sell all seasons. One of these foam beads. The paint markers. We'll need some ribbon. We're also going to need some chalk paint, hot glue, scissors, and then we're going to need some paint brushes, and a cotton swab or a Q-tip would help as well. You don't have to have one, but it makes it easier. So let's get crafty. So we're going to use one of these like layered hearts here from Dollar Tree, the 2 solid heart ornaments, an Easter egg, and then just that round circle. They sell these at the Dollar Tree. They come like 6 or 8 in a pack. So what we're going to do is just cut down this heart here, and we'll be able to use those as the antenna and the stinger on our bee. So we're going to take the Easter egg ornament and put it upside down to make it look like the body of the bee. And then we'll take that heart piece that we cut apart, and we're going to glue that on the back so that that bottom point of the heart is at the bottom, and that will be the stinger for the bee. So now we're going to take that round circle on the back. We're going to glue the head on, but you don't want to glue it too far down because you want to make sure that the bee's head is like a decent, size compared to the body. And then take your plain Valentine hearts here, and you're going to glue one on each side. Those will be the wings. And then on the back, you want to flip it over. And those pieces of the heart that we cut off, we're going to use those as the antenna. So you'll glue those on each side of the head. So these were all just ornaments I had left over. Like I said, they come 6 or 8 to a pack, so it's really easy to end up with some left over. At least they are for me, for the crafting. So then we're going to take one of these foam balls. You just want to cut that in half and then glue those to the top of the antenna. So this is our whole entire bee's body all put together. It's super simple. It just took a few minutes to actually do this whole thing. So now we're going to take that pinwheel and we're going to pull out the wire and then remove the covering of the wire to make it look like a bee body here. So what we're going to do, you're going to actually pull 2 of those off, and as you can see, it just kind of slides down the wire, and then if you stick your finger in the middle of the wire and pull, it comes out pretty easy, and then you can just slide that fabric down and around and off of that piece of wire. And once you have it off, just straighten it out. So then I used some hot glue and I glued that to the front and the back of the bee. Since we had, that cut up heart on the back, I wanted to cover that up and make it look nice. And I ended up just painting the rest of the back of the bee just solid black. So then I painted around the body of the bee black, his head black, the antenna I accidentally did the wings black because the kids were talking to me. I got a little bit distracted, so I ended up painting back over those with some white chalk paint. Initially, I was going to just leave them black and try to make little like yellow dots on the wings, but I just didn't like the way it looked. So I ended up switching it and I painted them back white. So you're going to paint the wings white, and then we're going to add some highlights around the border with the chalk marker. And once that's done, you're just going to take like a cotton swab and dip that in some of the black chalk paint, and then just dot the wings. As you can see, all the white highlights that I added with the chalk marker, the dots are all dry. Again, I just made a very simple bow. I just layer strips of ribbon and then tie it in the center with a piece of twine. So I added that right to the middle of the bee there to hide where the connections are with all the pieces that I glued together. And then I had this felt flower from the Dollar Tree from last year. They sold them again this spring. I just cut one of the little flowers off and added it to the center of the bow. You can add any flower here. It's really up to you. You don't need a flower. It's really just optional. And then around the wings, I still thought they looked a little plain, so I took a yellow paint marker and I actually added a squiggly line all the way around the edge of the heart in yellow. And I just thought that helped tie it all together. And here is our bee sign all finished. So we made the little bees out of the beads. We made this hive picture frame. We have a jar of honey. And then we have some different wall art, the Be Kind and Let It Be. And this is everything all together. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Schnookums helped me. I made this light box and he hopped right in. We do crafting videos every Thursday. If you like this video, please check out some of our other DIY crafting videos. And we post what's new at the Dollar Tree videos every single Friday. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you subscribe, like, and share. And here are the other videos you might also enjoy. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.